Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's community forum on the Reimagining Public Safety Task Force Recommendations Report. My name is Bernice Maricu North, and I serve as co-chair of the task force along with my colleague, Mark Maurer. And we thank you all for joining us tonight for tonight's discussion. As many of you know, the death of George Floyd in Minnesota sparked an outcry and a desire to change policing practices across the country, and Montgomery County is no exception. And this task force was created really out of a sense of urgency to make sure that we have meaningful police reform in this county that deals with systemic racism and addressing that problem as it is embedded in policing and public safety measures. The recommendations that were published on February 4th is really a starting point for us to have the conversation towards meaningful police reform and public safety reform in Montgomery County. Now, the task force has a variety of voices on it, from different backgrounds, educational backgrounds, different jobs, careers, different cultures, different ethnicities. And that diversity did pose a welcome challenge for us as we try to reimagine what public safety looks like in our diverse county. But I believe that this diversity proved to be an asset because we produced bold, unique, and thoughtful recommendations that really serve as a starting point to begin the conversations and how we can make our community safer regardless of race, income, or zip code. So tonight's forum is really an opportunity to hear from all of you in the community to help us to provide next steps from these recommendations that we have produced for the public to review. So as for tonight's forum and how it's going to go, we'll hear a few words from the county executive himself, Mark Elridge. And after that, we will hear from members of the Public Safety Committee of Montgomery County Council, President of the Council, Tom Hucker, Chair of the Public Safety Committee, Sydney Katz, and Vice President of the County Council, Gabe Alvernos. We're also going to hear from Councilmember Will Giovando, who, as many of you know, is a strong advocate on these issues of public safety and policing. And after that, because we have such a great number of RSVPs, and we thank you all for coming tonight to join us, we will have each individual speak for approximately 1 to 2 minutes to help us to provide the next steps going forward with these recommendations. Now, in terms of the logistics of tonight, the chat will serve as the primary function for tonight's communication to us. There are a few of us who are hosts of the chat, and you're going to input your question or comment to the chat, and we will do that once we do that particular chat. We will read each person's name on the chat, allow you to speak. You'll be unmuted because right now you are currently muted. And once you are unmuted, you will have the opportunity to give your 1 to 2 minute feedback or question for tonight. And this will allow us to hear from everybody as well as provide feedback if necessary on your comment or feedback. So again, thank you all tonight for coming, and I will turn the forum over to our county executive.
Thank you very much. So I want to put a little perspective on this because we have a tendency to think of a post-George Floyd world and what's come about as a result of that. And the fact is that everything that happened to George Floyd has been happening in this country for a very, very long time. In fact, you could say it's an unending tradition that extends from slavery forward. And America has seen some, I'd say, really difficult times, including the things I grew up with, the civil disturbances of the 60s, as people just could not bear up under the weight of the racism in this country and the burden it had put on the Black community. And in fits and starts, it moved forward, but it has not gotten where it needs to be. It has not changed in many fundamental ways, and it continues to be an issue. And the role of policing and community has long been extremely problematic. And, I go back to a time when, police were viewed more of an occupying army in many communities than they were as guardians of the public safety. And I remember discussions early when I was in Tacoma Park about moving to a different model of policing that focused on community involvement and community policing, and moving away from a more traditional policing where residents felt the police were there more as a hostile presence to make sure nobody stepped out of line rather than to keep people safe. So I say all that because, we've got this reference point from a year ago, which was absolutely horrific, but it's a reference point. It is not the beginning of the story. It was the latest chapter in the story that triggered a wave of people just saying, we're not dealing with this anymore the way we've had to deal with it in the past. And I think it's a good thing. It would be nice if some of these changes had come about by people sitting down and honestly recognizing the problems in the system and saying, we really need to think about things differently. We really need to do things differently. That conversation would have been nice, but those conversations didn't happen. And because they don't happen, we all pay a price for that socially. And sometimes the impetus for change comes about and is forged out of events which many people feel are very difficult. But I just wanted to put a note of perspective on what we're doing today and where we're going. Nationwide and here in Montgomery County, we've had incidents involving police use of force that have focused attention on racial injustices, as well as structural issues, and as well as on not just racial injustice, but just how we handle people with mental illnesses, which goes beyond race, as you can see by the shooting of somebody just the other day who was clearly deeply troubled. And our response to a deeply troubled man with a baseball bat was that he got shot, not a baseball bat, with a stick of wood. Very, very difficult. By the spring of last year, because I had been concerned about this and was going to move forward with these initiatives before George Floyd, just as COVID arrived, we had finished the task force that was charged with looking at how we should decriminalize homelessness and poverty. Because I think, as we know, poverty and homelessness have almost themselves become criminal activities, and they feed a poverty to prison pipeline, not just a school to prison pipeline. And many people get trapped, and once you've committed an act which is deemed illegal and puts you in jail, you may not be able to recover from that for the rest of your life. And so we had decided we were going to look at that, and we did. And then COVID hit. We'd also put money in the budget to make sure we would do the evaluation of policing in our community. And then COVID hit. Well, by the summer, we were moving forward. And in order to have a thoughtful discussion about this, I decided to create the Reimagining Public Safety Task Force in August of 2020. And I wanted the task force to look at these issues, and I wanted it to be dominated by the citizens of the community. And so I was careful to have the voting members be the actual residents, and the members who staffed it from the county did not vote on these decisions, because I wanted to make sure we had a chance to hear authentically from folks in the community. And I do want to thank both the community members and the staff that participated. I know not all those conversations were simple, but it was really important to have those conversations. And as a result, they've developed a set of recommendations that we have begun to unfold to the public, and we're going to be working on in the weeks and months to come. The work is absolutely vital if we're going to create a safer community that's responsive to all county residents. We need everybody to feel safe. We need everybody to feel that the people who serve them are there to serve them and protect them. And we have to make sure that the police department is one of those institutions that people look at as doing a job that makes us safer, not doing the job that puts certain people under control. I've received this report. I've read it. It is very thoughtful. It's very thorough. I appreciate that they included comments that reflect different perspectives on the committee, rather than presenting a report where everybody thinks the same way. You get a sense of some of the discussions that happened in different perspectives. I think that's helpful and going to be helpful in the work going forward. Effective law enforcement for all is about to undertake, I guess you'd call it the statistical review, the audit of the police department, which I think will provide us additional information and a lens to look at some of these recommendations through. I think it's important to understand what is happening in the community statistically, what drives activity, what drives presence, in order to make sure that we're making the right judgments on how we apply some of these solutions. But I'm really looking forward to their continuing their work. The Effective Law Enforcement for All, I think, was a great partner with the county and really helped the task force produce this report, which I think is really meaningful. I'm very proud of the comprehensive and forward-thinking way this report was put together, and I want to thank the Reimagining Public Safety Task Force for being willing to sit down and tackle a really difficult issue, and for being willing to sit in meetings with people where you knew the conversations were going to be difficult, and yet you persisted through those conversations. I want to thank the chairs, Bernice North and Mark Maurer, for their hard work and their willingness to take this on. This, I'm sure, was not an easy task. And I know that going forward, these conversations aren't going to be simple, and they're not going to be easy. They're going to continue to cause us to think about what we do and why we do it. I know that the vast majority of people want an outcome where we have a policing in this county that everybody feels is the right kind of policing, and that they don't feel that the police are there a threat to their communities or a threat to them individually. We've got to get there so that that level of comfort can be accomplished. And it's not going to be accomplished without, I think, an evaluation of how people go about doing things. We have long-standing practices in the police department that probably should have gotten people's attention years ago. And they didn't. They were just the normal way the policing was done. And I think, all of us have suffered by just the normal acceptance of the way things have been done for a very, very long time. So I see this as the beginning of the end of the acceptance of the way things were done and the willingness to evaluate how things should be done. And I really do look forward to the work that we're going to do going forward. Look forward to the community's input. And I think that in the long run, this will be a really step forward for Montgomery County. And I'm proud of everybody who participated in this and got us to where we are today. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive. Now we will have members of the County Council speak. And I guess I'll start with our newly elected President of the County Council, Tom Hucker. Oh, yes, we'll have to unmute him. Okay.
We good?
We're good.
Thanks, Bernice. Thank you all for being here. Thanks to the county executive for establishing this task force. Mark's been a leader on these issues for a long time, and I used to sit with him at the Public Safety Committee, and I know this is something that's many of the issues that you've tackled have been on the minds of both of us for quite a long time, along with the current Public Safety Chair, Sydney Katz, who's with us today. I'm really glad to be with all my council colleagues, each of whom have been really strong advocates for modernizing and reimagining our public safety. I want to thank each of the members of the task force for all your dedication and your focused efforts during the last few months. When you first convened in September, you took on this project that was really daunting, both in the scope and depth of the charge you had and the timeline. And I'm amazed that you've risen to that challenge with a lot of dexterity and expediency, and you did it all in the middle of a pandemic. You're certainly the first task force to come through with recommendations of this scale in the middle of a pandemic, when all of us are dealing with significant distractions and stress every single day. So thanks to Mark and Bernice for co-chairing. Thanks to all of you for supporting them and bringing your best intellectual game to this work. You've all acted as stewards of our values as a community, our public and private values, and you've kept us focused on the common goals of equity and service and progress. The challenges that are represented in your report are very difficult, and they've been around, as Mark said, for a long time, and they require this multidisciplinary and evidence-based approach to problem solving. I'm really proud to be able to serve in a job like this in a county where stakeholders like you are given a seat at the table, where our community leaders come together to voice their concerns and to leverage their resources and to advocate for everyone in the community, particularly the marginalized. The recommendations in your report, I think, really reflect that sort of vigorous, authentic process of trying to hear from everyone in the community and not just the usual suspects. I'm particularly happy that one of your recommendations calls for thorough, targeted data analysis and collection, and doing so in a way that provides policymakers like us useful metrics for addressing social disparities. My colleagues and I on the council, we recently reviewed policies and procedures related to demographic data collection and reporting by the police, and we are strongly moving in a direction of getting more comprehensive data so we can identify problematic trends and measure the efficacy of the solutions that are out there. We don't collect any data, we don't really know what's happening. Another recommendation I'm really happy about is that you are interested in changing methods of traffic enforcement. There have been a lot of bias over the years in traffic enforcement. We're all well aware of that. There were many bills regarding that issue when I was in the General Assembly years ago.
Someone is sharing their screen. Not sure who that is.
And it's clear periodically you should
let's see here. We can fix that. 1 second. Whoever. Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. Go ahead.
Sure. Bias in traffic enforcement's been around for a long time, and technology keeps changing. And it certainly makes sense to look at whether the police are the only ways we have to enforce our traffic laws, whether transportation staff should be involved, whether unbiased automated cameras and other machines like that should be involved. And that principle, I think, extends to our social services, to our conflict resolution, to crisis response as well. I'm very happy to partner with many of my colleagues to this summer to propose a special appropriation to allow us to hire trained social workers to be out in the community, co-located in public safety offices around the county, so they could get to our residents experiencing in crisis very, very quickly. So we could, for the first time, send behavioral health specialists to residents in crisis rather than just armed police officers. And I'm really happy to say that now 5 of those 6 social workers for those positions have been hired by our HHS. So that's a big step forward. And I'm looking forward to working with many of you to stand up those mobile crisis units. The task force report outlines a lot of our challenges and really lays, it's a great help to us by laying the groundwork for policy recommendations and legislative solutions that we're going to take up. So I'm really looking forward to working with all of you to explore your recommendations in more depth with my colleagues who are here on the Public Safety Committee, so we can put together a public safety apparatus that's really fair and contemporary and effective and unbiased. And as we begin the work of passing our operating budget soon for FY22, these are really going to be timely in guiding our work on the budget as well. So again, I'm very grateful to your support for your work on this. You make our job easier, and very much looking forward to working with you on your recommendations to put as many in place as possible. Thank you so much again for having me tonight.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you so much, Councilmember Hucker. Next, we will have Sydney Katz, who is chair. Oh, sorry, 1 second.
I believe we are still live.
Sorry, everybody. That's okay. That's Meyer. Technology at its finest, everyone. I apologize. Next, we have Councilmember Sydney Katz, who serves as chair of the Public Safety Committee.
Well, thank you very, very much. And thank you to everyone on the call, and especially thank you to the committee. I jokingly told Bernice and Mark, just as we joined the call, that I actually haven't seen them but once this week. It seems like I see them several times in a week now. And I'm most appreciative for all the work that everyone has done on this committee. And I certainly look forward to the discussions. I've read the report, and let me just say, as for those of you who have read it, this is a report that you need to read more than once, and probably more than twice, and probably many more times beyond that. This public safety involves everything that we do. Probably every department that we have in Montgomery County involves public safety, whether it be Health and Human Services, and Vice President Alvernos is the chair of the Public Safety Committee as well. I mean, the Health and Human Services Committee as well. But it involves everything: education, it involves transportation. The list goes on, and we need to have every group work together so that we can be effective, so that we can make certain that people are comfortable and that people feel safe. And I'm sure that the report that came out just a few days ago, I'm sure there are people in the public that aren't aware that the report is here. I'm sure there are people in the public who have read it 2 and 3 times. So we all need to work together. It's my sincere hope that we hear from everyone on this, whether you agree with every item that the committee is suggesting, whether you disagree with items that the committee is suggesting. We need to hear from everyone so that we can get to the best place. My colleagues have heard me say many, many times that to me, a community is a family. And that's what we need to do. We need to come together as a family and work together to get Montgomery County to the very best place that we can get to. And I sincerely thank each and every one of you for working with us. And I sincerely thank the committee, because I know committee work sometimes might not be the most fun, but I sincerely thank the committee for all that you've done. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Katz. Next, we will have Vice President of the County Council, Gabe Alvernos.
Well, first, thank you, Bernice and Mark, for your leadership in shepherding this really impressive process. I'm sure many of people on this call have co-chaired a committee or two and know how challenging that can be, especially under the circumstances that our council president mentioned earlier. And you've done an outstanding job. The task force really was thoughtful and deliberate in both the process that you used to arrive at the recommendations, which I felt were transparent and inclusive all the way through. But the recommendations themselves are substantive and cross a number of areas that are both in the short, medium, and long term. And I do want to thank the county executive for his leadership in appointing this task force and acknowledging the need to come together as a community as quickly as he did. And so I appreciate your leadership, sir. And the report is outstanding. For a little bit of background and context, for 12 years, I was the director of the county's recreation department. And so I got to know bureaucracy, and I got to know what it was like to run a county operation from the inside for 12 years. And I can tell you that oftentimes administrators or departments sort of stay in their lanes. But to tackle the issues, the very complex issues that all of us have to deal with, it needs to be done in a systemic fashion. And so this task force, when we said reimagine, you took that to heart and you truly reimagined what's possible. And I have the benefit as the chairman of our public safety committee, my good friend Sidney Katz mentioned, of chairing the Health and Human Services Committee, but also serving on the Public Safety Committee, which is a unique perch because you see the fusion between our behavioral health team. You see the fusion between our housing department and unit and the very constituents and residents that law enforcement are tasked with keeping us all together. So I think that there's a tremendous opportunity for us to more intentionally infuse programs, services, policies in ways that are meaningful and substantive and deep and long lasting. And as our council president mentioned, I was proud to join him in the introduction of a bill that really does move the needle, but was also symbolic of, I think, much more of what we need moving forward, which is enhancing our mobile crisis team through adding social workers that work collaboratively and hand in hand with our first responders. We should be doing that across the board. We should be doing that in all areas. And so I look forward to not just tonight's conversation, but many, many, many more that we will be having over the coming months and years, so that we systemically address the issues much further upstream, and we do it as a community and we do it holistically. I'm confident we're going to get there, and I'm also confident that we're going to come out much stronger than we were before. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Next, we will have Councilmember Will Jawando.
Thank you, Bernice, and good evening to everybody. Good to see you. Thank you to the county executive. Thank you, Mark, Mar, and all of the task force members. I know it was a big group. I know many of you. And thank you for everyone for being here tonight. This is a monumental task. And I was glad that the county executive started, with the historical context piece, which I think is so important when you talk about changing any system, form, or structure, but particularly one as pernicious and as embedded in the history of systemic and institutional racism as police violence and our public safety and systems as a whole, right? And, you can't have a conversation about why half of the people arrested in this county in the last couple of years were Black residents, even though they're 20% of the population, unless you understand the origins of slave patrols in the Carolinas in 1700s, which is the predecessor of the modern day police force, right? And there's a long history going from there to here, and you must understand that, and it's important to understand that context. And I am very happy that the first bill that this council introduced, and indeed the first signing ceremony that this county executive did, was Bill 1901. 2019 is for the year of the bill, and the 01 is the first. It was the Law Enforcement Trust and Transparency Act, which I introduced on Martin Luther King's birthday, January 15th, 2019. Just 2 weeks after I was sworn in, or a couple weeks, maybe a month, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, addressing police independent investigations when police kill a resident, requiring us to partner up. There's now a statewide bill that is heading in that direction, hopefully, and public reporting about what happened in that investigation. Because certainly when we give our police a lot of power to take life, to protect and serve the public, to be guardians of the public and of our safety, we need to know what happened, why it happened, and how we can stop police from having to kill residents. Sometimes it's unavoidable, but we need to have high transparency and scrutiny and independence in those investigations so that the public can trust. And that was our first bill. And that was well before the George Floyd incident. So this council had demonstrated early on, this county executive, that this work was important, and that it's something that is going to take a long time to extract and extricate that system of systemic racism so that we really have equal justice under the law. And that was, we've had some significant issues here. I think one of the biggest challenges we face, and why I think this report is really great, and Council President mentioned the data report that we all introduced and is making its way through. We have significant disparities here. I mentioned one, but there's many others. And we have to understand that we are not immune to these same issues. Are we a great county? Do we have great people that are working on our police force and throughout government serving us? Absolutely. But we also have significant issues embedded in these systems, and we have to be honest about both those facts and approach it soberly. And I also think this report was bold. I appreciate the comments, Councilmember Alvernos, to lay out and really take reimagining to heart. And I think at the core of it is what should be the form and function and role of police in a 21st century model that understands what we have now is not working, particularly for Black and brown residents and folks with disabilities. What is the role? Our police, should they interact with people that are experiencing homelessness? No. Should they be interacting with people primarily who are dealing with mental health crises? No. We're having a discussion now about the role of police in schools. All those things that you all tackle that are difficult issues. So kudos to you. I look forward to hearing from the rest of you tonight. I'll just leave you with this. We are in a significant moment in history. And while this is a long history, there are times in it where you can make massive amounts of change. And how blessed and lucky are we to be in Montgomery County, a place where your elected officials want to make that change. We might not all agree on all the details, but we realize and understand it needs to happen. And I think we can, to quote my good friend Sidney Katz, we can be the model and should be the model for the nation about how to do this right. And this is a part of it. So really happy to be with you tonight and appreciate County Executive and all who were involved in preparing this report. Thank you.
Thank you. So next we're going to go ahead and get started with the overview of the report. And we're just waiting for the PowerPoint to be shared. Caroline, just give me a thumbs up when you have the report ready.
Will do.
Okay.
All right, Bernice, you should be able to see it.
I see it, but not in presentation format.
No. All right.
Perfect. Yes. So we've talked a little bit about what the report has been for the last 5 months, really. As mentioned earlier, we started the process in August, and after that, we spent a very grueling 5 months trying to create this report that really reflects the diversity of voices in the county. Next slide. So this is an overview of the key players that really helped put this report together. Mark Maurer and I have served as co-chairs of the task force, approximately 79 people total, 45 of which have been community members. And as the county executive noted earlier this evening, the voices on this report are the voices of the community members. Each of the community members served in 5 different focus area groups, and we'll talk about those focus area groups in a little bit. But each of those focus area groups had 2 co-chairs, many of which are on the call tonight, who we felt were very passionate about the issues that they were charged with volunteering for, and could steer very difficult conversations in these issues of reimagining public safety. And the community members, as I mentioned, are really the heart and soul of this report. They worked diligently, really were very bold in their thinking, and were just unafraid to really see how far this county can go in terms of being a leader in reimagining public safety for the county and being a model, really for the country. They were outstanding and meeting weekly, if not twice a week, over the course of the fall and winter, in drafting these recommendations and producing what is before you, all of you today. The county representatives, they range from members of the police department unions, county agencies, state's attorney's office. There are many people involved in providing information to the community members to help us formulate thoughtful, bold recommendations in terms of reimagining public safety. So they were very instrumental in providing us the context of how things go in the county and helping us understand how we can make things better for all of us. The public input was really from the, first of all, we had a survey that was put out in November, which yielded thousands of responses from people across the county. And we also had the community forum in December, which yielded a hearty discussion on some of the issues, including SROs, domestic violence, to name a few topics, as well as cahoots. Those are definitely topics that were raised in the public inputs portion of our process, and they were instrumental in helping us craft our recommendations. And last but not least, LIFA, Effective Law Enforcement for Change. I'm sorry, Effective Law Enforcement for All, excuse me. They were, again, a very instrumental and critical component of this process. They helped us very much be on task because we had a very short time period to make the recommendations, and they really helped us organize our thoughts and our meetings in getting the recommendations that are before you all. So a lot of people say this is a very robust and thoughtful recommendation report, and we give a lot of credit to our consultants for helping us create the framework to start drafting the bill recommendations that we have before you today. Next slide.
So, hi, Mark Maurer here, the co-chair along with Bernice. Our task force set up our work with 5 focus areas, both so that we could dig in deeply in different areas and people could really focus on issues where they had concerns, where they had knowledge base and the like. And let me just run through these quickly, and that will lead into the key recommendations we came up with. The first focus group was looking at 911 and 311 call responses, which included a range of issues, asking questions about whether there are any language barriers when people call with concerns, looking very carefully at how calls are diverted, how they're addressed, to what extent do they go to the police, to what extent to other agencies, is there potential to shift some areas of problems that come up. Mental health is one issue that comes up frequently. Should that be responded to by police, social service agencies, or some combination? So looking at that set of issues. The second area was the county police department's budget, its data, its structure. The police department does a wide range of programs, initiatives, and activities, and trying to get a handle on what that looks like, to the extent that we might want to recommend some changes in emphasis on how we address behavioral issues, criminal issues, and the like. What does that mean for the police department? Third focus group was programming within policing, which starts off with the recruiting, hiring, and training process. What kind of training is currently going on? How well are we addressing racial bias? How well are we addressing de-escalation and the like? I think it's important to note we have a lot of very good things going on in the county, including with the police department. We're a relatively wealthy county. We can afford to make investments in different areas. But I think, as our county executive pointed out early on, one could have said the same thing about the Minneapolis Police Department the day before George Floyd was shot. They had good training in general, certainly above average. They had diversity of leadership. They were talking about de-escalation. So it just tells us we need to keep digging as deep as we can to make sure we're addressing these very challenging issues. Focus area number 4 is alternative programs to police and jail interactions. We do have a good range of alternatives to try to divert people either from prosecution or from incarceration. The question here is there a potential for expansion of these programs? What is the racial, ethnic equity outcome of the various alternatives, the criteria used to gain admission to one of these types of programs? How can we build on things that have begun to be established in the county? And the last area is best practices for crisis response, social services. What are we currently doing? We've heard a little bit just tonight about an expansion of social workers to deal with crisis intervention. So how well are we doing this now? If money were no object, what would we want to see happen in the county? And does this involve an expansion of resources, a diversion of resources, collaboration with police and social service agencies and the like? So those are the 5 areas. where we did the focus, and out of this conversation came the recommendations in our report.
Now, as for the key recommendations, as if people have not already noted, there are 87 recommendations in our report, and this particular part of the PowerPoint reflects some of the recommendations that we saw running through all 5 focus groups, and we sorted them out in 4 categories. And there are about 12 recommendations that we want to bring to the forefront to either be addressed or dealt with as soon as possible. We thought, for one, there are very bold and thoughtful recommendations that need to be discussed with county council and the community, as well as the county executive. And they're ones that we really thought were good steps towards meaningful police reform and public safety changes in the county. So the first section is shifting certain responsibilities from police to county agencies and organizations. We discussed fully implementing an ecosystem of county agencies and other organizations like Cahoots, for one, that allows all of the wonderful county agencies that exist to help deal with certain community social needs working together. We found that they all exist, a plethora of them exist in the county, but to have them all working together for the common need of a particular individual is what will best serve Montgomery County. Also changing the triage of calls of service. We had bold discussions regarding dealing with language issues with 901 301 calls, as well as the effectiveness of the 901 301 triage. So we discussed ways to make sure that language access is accurate once someone calls 911 311, and whether the police is necessarily the first group to respond to the situation, as opposed to someone possibly from HHS or another agency or another nonprofit, for instance. That's the starting point for us to have these conversations as to how the new triage of calls should look like. The second area, revising law enforcement recruitment, training, and public encounter with civilians. The first area we looked at was inclusion of public safety measures across the county police staff and residents that really reflect who we are as a county. We're very, as I mentioned many times tonight, we're a very diverse county with different cultures, different educational backgrounds, different careers, and we want a police force that reflects who we are as a county and our values. At least one of the recommendations recommends 100% county residency requirement for new recruits. The second portion of this section is lessening police presence on streets as a direct measure to help diminish the impact of racial bias in interaction with MCB police officers. And this is one of the recommendations that is definitely the bold one, definitely really takes reimagining to heart. We want to make sure that people feel safe regardless of income or zip code and race. And we have the data, for instance, from the LL report that shows, for instance, traffic stops are disproportionately impacting Black and Brown residents. And this is a recommendation that resulted from reviewing that particular report, as well as many other conversations from individuals that live in certain areas that have high Black and Brown populations in their police districts. So this is a recommendation that, again, is allowing us to be bold in our thinking and starts a conversation as to how we can reimagine this happening for our county. We also talked about reimagining training, including cultural competency to deal with the diversity of our community, crisis intervention training, CIT, as well as implicit bias. We all know that training alone isn't the answer, but it doesn't hurt to have enhanced training opportunities for new recruits in the current police force and other agencies as well that deal with law enforcement and public safety. We also addressed changing the law enforcement culture. None of these recommendations are going to come to fruition if we don't tackle the heart of it all, which is the culture of our law enforcement. So we include in our report, we included discussions on annual hearings or reports and getting the Office of the Inspector General involved to making sure that we are holding law enforcement accountable to have them serve and protect without perpetuating any systemic racism in the county.
Okay, and the next set of recommendations has to do with implementing or expanding alternative responses to crime. So we start off with a recommendation of decriminalizing certain crimes. The county already permits police in certain situations to issue a citation rather than arresting someone. The reasoning behind this is that for crimes that are not terribly serious, we can handle these without having to have major police presence, major court resources devoted to this. And also we can thereby avoid saddling somebody with a criminal record, which will follow him or her for the rest of their lives with all kinds of consequences. We looked at the school resource officer program. There's been a great deal of discussion. It's ongoing in the county. Our conclusion is that we should eliminate funding for this program based on the fact that a wealth of research has really failed to document any positive impacts on safety in the schools. These programs have frequently led to expansion of what's come to be known as the school to prison pipeline and the racial ethnic disparities that accompany that. We are aware that first, there is state legislation that requires a certain level of police engagement with schools, and so any movement on the SRO program would have to be something that's in compliance with that legislation. We're also aware that we've heard anecdotal evidence in a number of cases where police have developed good relationships with students in the schools and very supportive relationships. We're pleased to hear that, but we also believe there's no reason why that relationship has to come from police officer. If we do eliminate the SRO program, we would very much like to see that replaced with social workers, counselors, violence prevention workers, and the like in the schools performing some of those functions. When it comes to alternative court processes and sentencing, we have drug courts, mental health courts, and a variety of other alternatives. We do want to look at how effective these have been in diverting people from jail or prison incarceration, what the racial, ethnic data tells us about who's being diverted in these cases, and potential for expansion for programs that in many cases are producing good outcomes. Finally, in this bucket of recommendations, the issue of traffic enforcement. We've heard a little bit already this evening, the potential for further automation of this, which relieves police officers of the necessity to do this in some cases, and also reduces the risk of what we've seen, driving while black and similar kinds of things that have led to very bad outcomes. The final set of recommendations has to do with collecting and analyzing data and using data to make constructive change. We see in the criminal justice system, and this is true of all institutions in society, pretty severe racial ethnic disparities in rates of arrest, rates of conviction, incarceration, and the like. And there's a variety of explanations that are offered by people about where that comes from and whether this is due to involvement in crime, whether it's due to structural racism, individual decision-making, and the like. If we are to be able to move forward on this, we need to really have very finely detailed data that gives us a sense of how the problem comes about, because only then can we decide what we need to do about it. It also calls upon leaders in policing, the courts, incarceration, to use data on an ongoing basis to identify problem areas, to incorporate into training, to measure progress towards goals of reducing the disparities that are so prevalent in the system and so troubling for our community. So this is a set of recommendations we think are particularly critical, highlighted by the group. And again, there are many more in the report, and we encourage you all to look through them as well and see what we need to be prioritizing along with this.
Okay. So now this is the opportunity to begin our community conversation, and we do have a couple people that have already asked a couple questions in the chat. And so what I'll do is I'll start off first, and there'll be other co-hosts that will chime in. But please, we encourage you to, at the very least, just put your name in the chat saying, hey, I have a question and comment so we can identify you and unmute you and give you the opportunity to speak. Because there's I believe over 100 of you in this chat tonight, we are asking to ideally keep your comments about 1 or 2 minutes and that there be no follow-up questions. I know it's a very passionate issue and a lot of our conversations are always back and forth, but for tonight, because we want to make sure everyone is heard, we'll give people 1 to 2 minutes to speak, and perhaps Mark or myself or members of the council, county executive, or Caroline can respond if need be, and then we'll move on to the next comment. So I will start first. The first person is, and forgive me, I hope I'm not butchering your name, Stephanie, but Stephanie Gortensum. We're going to try to find you. All right. Okay. All right. Okay, you're having trouble meeting. Okay, 1 second. There we go. Okay. All right. Somebody should be unmuted.
Stephanie, yeah, I sent her the ask to unmute as well.
Okay.
Okay, while we
wait
on Stephanie, we can move on to Devara Starfisky is who I have next.
And Stephanie, we'll get back to you next, okay?
Hi, thank you. Good evening, and thank you to all of the members of the task force. My name is Devara Starfisky. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a community organizer with Jews United for Justice. And my question is, in response to this fantastic report that's been drafted and shared with us, what happens next to actually implement the recommendations of the task force? And what is the timeline for that process? Will you commit to a regular reporting schedule, at least every 3 months, if not more frequently, and to community meetings on that same timeline to share updates and get community feedback to ensure this report is best utilized? Thank you.
County Secretary, I don't know if you wanted to take that and lead that response.
I had not laid out a timeline for how we would do the feedback. The goal is to have meetings with the community, hear what people have to say. I've asked, the committee itself to, possibly stay engaged in whole or in part to talk about some of these things. We're going to have discussions with the department itself and also with our consultant, and we're waiting for them to bring back the data, because some of the issues raised in the report, I think how you interpret them or how you actualize them has some relationship to what the data comes back and shows us. And so we're looking for the data piece to come back, but I have no problem saying, well, we can check in, I certainly anticipate multiple meetings and letting people know where we are in the process. And some things we will deal with to the extent we can, just because we know we can and we know we have to do it. And we, for an example, last spring, we came up with a duty to intervene requirement. We just said we're doing this, and we wrote it back then. We didn't wait for this process to take place. We didn't wait for legislation. We just said this has to change, and we're going to do it. So there's some things that we can do right away. We know we're moving toward, I won't say cahoots, but a cahoots model. We're using them. I don't know if it's official yet, but we're getting them to be a vendor in the county. We're going to use them to help us design a cahoots-like system for the county. So those things we're going to be doing, even as we talk about some of the other stuff. Because there's no point in waiting for a report or waiting for a conclusion when there are things you have to do, and there's no question about it.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive. Bernice, is Stephanie Guttersman available?
I do not see her in the chat, so it might be a technical issue. She fell off, but I can go next.
Okay.
I can go next with Pat.
Okay.
Okay. All right, next we have Pat Fenn.
Hi, I'm from Montgomery County NAACP. My question again was the one that Devara just talked about, which was the implementation of your recommendations. And what I think you said, Mr. County Executive, is that you're going to implement the ones you can do sort of right away. But can you elaborate again about what you were saying about keeping the committee still engaged? I didn't hear all of that.
But we're still trying to decide how we go forward. I mean, the committee came to an end, but there are committee members that would like to continue to look at things. We're getting more data, which may mean it would be good for the community or the committee to look at the data that goes along that may affect some of the recommendations. So I see this as just an evolving process. Some things will be easy. You know, they're just direct, and there are things that are easily done by management. Some items are budgetary. And for example, I'll go back to the cahoots-like model. How much we can do in a year will be somewhat dependent on what we can afford in this year because of the peculiar circumstances of this year. But we'll be moving things forward as we see possible. With some training issues. Once we get a sense of what comes out of look at our training practices, and I know that there's a group that's going to go look at how the officers are trained. We may decide we're going to just change some things right away because they just stand out and they need to be changed right away. So I'm just saying for the time being, we're flexible on how we're going to do some of these things. They won't all follow the same path.
Yeah, if I could add just briefly on the council side, I think there's a couple things happening at the same time, and in the partnership here is, you've got the police advisory committee as well, that 13-member body. They met earlier this week. They took action. They're going to be reviewing this, taking action, and making recommendations to both the executive and the council on various things. They did so I think they voted yesterday, for example, on the SRO issue to support the legislation that I introduced with Councilmember Reimer. They'll be taking up other issues. There are several bills pending before the council right now related to a whole bunch of issues. I think you have the co-sponsors, co-leads on this data bill. County Executive mentioned data being such an incredibly important part of this. There's certain things we don't track that we should be tracking. There are disparities, so that bill's moving forward. And then obviously budget season, right? Mark's going to send over, County Executive is going to send over a budget. We're going to consider that. That's another opportunity to look at what's going on. The use of force bill we passed over the summer. The chief is getting ready to implement that and train, and that raised the use of force, deadly force, to a higher standard, banned a lot of things, codified the duty to intervene. So they're going to start training on that. So that'll need to be looked at over time. So it's going to be a process. But as the county executive said, I think there's things we're doing now, but there's things that will be coming.
All right. Thank you. I see next up is Tara Dunderdale.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Tara Dunderdale. I live in District 3. I use she or they pronouns. I want to thank the members of the task force. The report talks at length about culture, particularly the warrior culture versus guardian culture and the focus on racial inequity. But all of the research shows that the only real way to reduce harm caused by police is reducing contact with community and changing the rules about how police engage. Will you, and you is, the county executive's office, the council, commit to implementing the recommendations that pertain to structure and rules in the concrete, quantifiable ways that will change conduct and not just take us down the road of unenforceable guidelines about culture that just draw more resources into the police department but have no data to show that they work, like Minneapolis, for example.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I've been saying for a long time that you really have to deal with cultural issues that, and that it's not, people have been in the department a long time, and culture evolves when people do things over and over again and something appears to be normal and people think, well, that's the normal thing to do. And then we've decided rightfully that some of this stuff shouldn't be normal. And so we're gonna look to change things. I'll give you an example. We've talked a lot about protectional stops in the context of equipment repair, or the infamous dice hanging from your rearview mirror. And what we've said is that we want a protocol developed of exactly how that should transpire, such as you got a tail light out, I pull you over, I tell you I have to pull you over because you got a tail light out, I'm going to give you a repair order. Here's a repair order, and be on your way. And in the context of having that discussion with the chief, one of the things he said, which was kind of stunning, and it gets to the point about culture, is that actually, according to the courts, you cannot hold a person for any longer than the reason that you pulled them over for. So if I pulled you over for speeding, I can only hold you as long as it takes me to write you a speeding ticket. And we are not supposed to be doing some of this other stuff. I can tell you, I've spoken to people on the police side who said they, historically, they've been encouraged to do things. Somebody referred to it as go into the gray area. So we're going to have to lay out once again, and for all stops, that this is the procedure. And the good thing about body cameras, I will say, is that you'll be able to see whether a stop for, doing 15 to 35 was only the stop for doing 15 to 35, or was there an effort to try to push it into something that it shouldn't have been pushed into? So I think we've got the tools to make sure that things are done right. And we've got to reiterate and create policies that delineate what is exactly the expected way to approach these things. I think between those two, we can be more effective, but we've got to be conscious about making this change, and we've got to be sure that it just doesn't exist on paper, but that the directions given to officers matches what's put on paper, and that everybody follows what we say they want them to follow. And frankly, it may require some officers' willingness to come across occasionally and say, I know you say this is the policy, but this is what we're being asked to do. And I've had those moments with people. So people need to be able to do that and do that safely. You're right, this is complex. You just can't write it out of existence.
Thank you. Next up is a question or comment from Mark Disler.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. And as briefly as I can, I start with the proposition that we need, for social progress, both public safety and fair and just law enforcement. So I favor a number of the reforms, putting more mental health people out on the street, just a number of the things that you all talked about. But I want to say that I'm hoping that the funding for these initiatives not come at the expense of the levels of police that we can put out there wherever it's decided to deploy them. And I want to suggest as an idea that if you do like a 0.25, a 0.5% across the board cut in the budget, or you can shield parts of the budget from that kind of cut and fund some of these initiatives that way, rather than cutting the number of police. And I'll make this last quick observation. We need to address systemic racism and structural racism. And I heard a lot of that from our elected officials, and that's good. I haven't heard a lot of discussion of crime in the county. The police, this is what they need to do in protecting us. So I just wanted to put that thought out there. We need to do a number of these things. I'm hoping we can find ways of funding it without cutting levels of police. Thank you.
If I could give a quick response to that, and thanks for your comments. There's been a lot of discussion nationally about cutting funds for policing and the like. It seems to me, and what we try to do in the task force is say, what are the programs and policies and services we want to support, whether they're in policing, whether they're in social services, whether they're community-based programs. I think we want to look at the best allocation of resources to get the best results, both in enhanced public safety and challenging racial injustice. And only after we go through that process can we really determine what is the impact on budgets for policing, social services, and the like. I mean, it might or might not result in changes in budgeting for police or any other agency, but I think we should lay out the structure first, and then we can begin to think about what resources are required and what's the best way to allocate them.
Thank you.
Great. Next up is Melissa Goman.
Great. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I have a question, I think, on a similar topic, but coming from the other side of it, which is that as we are implementing the changes to move current police duties to other parts of the county government and other service providers, as has been discussed, to mental health providers, to school administration, I think that we should commit to reducing the number of police officer positions and the MCPD budget proportionally if we're doing this rearrangement. And I was wondering if the council members or if County Executive Elrich might commit to doing that.
I'll tell you what I'm looking at. There was an interesting New York Times article probably 6 months ago, maybe longer. Time flies during COVID, so you lose sense of time, I think, a little bit. And they looked at different police departments, and they looked at the amount of time that officers spent in various aspects of their job. And what struck me is that if I took the moments when we might have the greatest concern about what could happen then, it was actually a fairly small part of an officer's day. And it led me to kind of realize that it's not so simple that if you spend less time doing this, that to cover, say, for example, the eastern side of Montgomery County, I would necessarily do it with fewer officers. I mean, that is a separate question in terms of what's the right level of policing. But if you just think, not every officer encounters a homeless person and deals with a homeless person every day. Some officers do. Sometimes it's very short, and sometimes it gets involved. There's no way of, attributing to that an amount of money that I could reduce that would let me take that officer out of his beat wholly and entirely. So the more I look at this, the more complex it may be, but I also feel like we don't have any choice but to address the social justice issues. And, social justice is going to cost some money. And we have to be willing to say that this is important enough that if we can't save it someplace, then we're going to do it because it's the right and necessary thing to do. So I'm not looking and feeling like I've got to trade a dollar here to get a dollar of improvement. I've got to make investments in improvement. Hopefully some of what we do leads to some savings, but I think finding that's going to be more complicated than we thought.
Okay, thank you. Next up for a comment or question is Mark Wolf.
It's actually Marilyn Kresge-Wolf.
Okay.
I'm in District 15, working with Jews United for Justice and Silver Spring Justice Coalition on mental health crisis response. And my question is, how do we ensure if there's a mental health response and a police response to a mental health crisis, that the assessment of the mental health professionals is not overruled by police?
I guess that's going to come down to when we actually create this, to make sure that if we've decided these are mental health responses, that they're treated as mental health responses. Some of the jurisdictions that do this send out the mental health responder based on how the intake call is analyzed by the call taker. So here's something else we haven't talked about, but call takers are going to have to be able to take a call from somebody and determine what is needed, what's the appropriate thing to send there, much like they have to decide, am I sending a fire truck or an ambulance, and what kind of fire truck. We're going to need to decide, am I sending a policeman or am I calling the mental health response team to go and deal with this call? So that will develop as we work with Cahoots in creating our own program here and making sure that our call takers wind up being trained and analyzing what the nature of the call is and what's the right response.
Thank you.
Gabe is raising his hand.
Councilmember Alvernos is trying to speak.
Oh, sorry, Themmy. Okay, excellent. I'm gonna get you to unmute here.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So, Mark is absolutely right. And the other thing that we need to do is oftentimes there's more than just one call when dealing with a behavioral health issue and families that are in crisis. Oftentimes there are multiple calls. And so I think that we have to be much more intentional about working with our behavioral health team. And that's why I really like the Cahoots model, because unless we address the systemic issue that led to the person being in crisis in the first place and prevent that from happening again in the future, then things can escalate out of control, and they can escalate out of control really quickly. And so I really appreciate your question, Ms. Wolf, because you're absolutely right. There has to be a complete and total fusion and synergy between our mental health team and our law enforcement. And I learned recently that they receive something in the order of 70 hours of training when in looking at dealing with mental health crisis, which is significant. But when you think about the fact that our behavioral health providers and specialists spend years, decades, gaining training and going into the fields in the first person. And so I think that there's also an opportunity for us not just to train police officers, but to train our frontline behavioral health team too in how to work collaboratively on both sides. And so I think if we do those three things together, it will help address, and these are complex issues. They're not always going to be the same, but we can do more steps in advance to minimize and hopefully eradicate the tragedies, too many of them, that we see that could and should be avoided.
And I'll just 30 seconds. One of the great things about Cahoots, and we all did a call with them, and in 40 years, they've never lost a person. And the training of the 911 call is such a critical component, because when it comes in there, that's who's directed. And a lot of times it'll just go straight to Cahoots and police won't even respond. And so that critical component of how the call comes in, what questions are asked, to Gabe's point of the training those individuals have, that's going to be a key mitigating factor in those types of cases.
And it has to be culturally appropriate. It has to be multilingual and understand the complexities related to that across the board. So that is another key element to the response.
And if I can just jump in for less than 30 seconds, if Will did 30 seconds, I'll do less. I also think and as I said earlier, what we are doing, public safety is across all departments. And we need to make certain that not only do the people respond, not only do we get a better situation or a calmer situation immediately, we need to do the follow-up behind that. We need to work with the people who cause the response to make certain that we have mental health courts and other drug courts or whatever the problem is, to make certain that that person gets the help that they need. And we were talking about budgets, and we need to give the resources to the departments that need them so that they can do their job. Just to say, we were talking about data before. We can't just say get the data. We have to make certain that they have the software and everything necessary so that they can get it. We need to help them do their job so they can help us. Thanks.
Great, thanks. All right, we got a lineup here, so we will go with Stephanie Gutterson, and after her
Thompson. Yeah.
is Mike Larson. I'm sorry, Stephanie, go ahead.
No worries. I really like a lot of the recommendations. I read through all 87. The one weakness I see among all of them, though, is that they seem to imply that the police are necessary at all. I don't think they are. I don't think that the reimagining went far enough. We can imagine a world without police. Police didn't exist until 150 years ago. So there's certainly a majority of world history without cops and without armed people roaming the streets. Frankly, I think it would be best if we tax the rich and use that money as, in addition to the current budget that the police see, and rid ourselves of police departments, rid ourselves of prisons, and take on some of the restorative justice recommendations that were in this proposal. And I am wondering if the council is okay with considering the elimination of the police entirely.
Everyone's jumping up and down. Go ahead, Cindy.
Indeed.
I am not.
Somebody.
I am not interested in not having a police force.
Yeah, I can just say, and I was almost chimed in on Miss the other. I can't remember. I'm looking for her now, but whoever asked about the funding reduction. I do think that as we analyze this, there is a case to be made for, and we say we reallocate, and half the calls that come into 911 that are mental health are going to somebody else. And we're not doing this proactive policing, which in my view is a version of broken windows policing, where we stop, particularly Black and brown people, say, hey, what are you doing here? Why are you here? What's in your pockets? We stop and frisk, which we don't track right now. And we focus police on violent crime and investigation, and we pay our police more. That's some people don't like that, but we have one of the lowest pay for starting police, around $50,000. I think you can have and we invest in training them more. I think you can have a more focused, smaller, highly trained police force. I don't think you eliminate the need for law enforcement in a society as big and complex as ours, but we certainly can change their size, focus, function, and remove some duties that they shouldn't be involved in to limit some of these unnecessary interactions. I am for that, but I don't think you can eliminate it completely.
Okay, thanks. Let's see, Mike Larson, are you still with us?
I am.
Okay.
Good evening. Mike Larson. I am a resident, a business owner, and sit on the Silver Spring Urban District Advisory Council in downtown Silver Spring. And I just wanted to know if you all, you talk about reducing the force of District 3 and 4 by 50%. And I wholly support reducing the force and, reducing the contact officers have with residents. I am very concerned, though, where we are right now in downtown Silver Spring. Thank you to the council, county executive, for getting us the 2 mental health professionals that started last week to help deal with the homeless and mental health issues. But we have a serious violent crime spike happening here in the last 3 or 4 months. And our concern is, have you looked at other ways of safety ambassadors? We don't need armed officers necessarily. We need folks that say, hi, this is a community that are eyes that can make sure if, like last fall, we had 3 young men who were harassing, it elevated to the level of assault and finally to an armed assault. But that went on for 3 weeks. We just need some sort of presence, not armed, not police officers, but some sort of ambassador. So I hope, my question is, long way to get to it, have you thought about other ways of making sure that different types of areas, since we're not residential, purely residential, keep that safety and don't have if there's spikes in crime, violent crime?
Well, I can jump in on that, and it's a very appropriate question, certainly. For one thing, of course, this particular year and crime trends, they tell us less than they might have some other time. When we get past COVID, we'll know how much was related to that or not. But nonetheless, it's a significant issue. I think even for those recommendations task force that we might think of as aspirational, that we can't fully get to where we want to go for 10 or 15 years, the change is going to be incremental. Adding new programs, expanding ones that work and the like is going to be incremental. And it has to be an ongoing dialogue. It has to be an ongoing data analysis. We have a bunch of ideas we think would produce better outcomes. We could be wrong on some things. So once we start to implement them, then we need to get the feedback, look at the data and the like. And the kinds of approaches you're suggesting, unarmed people, violence interrupters, which have been used in a number of urban areas, all of these need to be part of the mix, part of the discussion as we start to move forward.
Thank you.
All right, let's see. Next up is Timothy Ernest, and then we have Carlene Dunkley in the queue after Timothy.
Hi, my name's Tim Ernst. I live in Silver Spring. I've lived here for about 18 years. I guess in addition to I think it's about $288 million is the Montgomery County Police Department budget. I'm curious about how much money Montgomery County gets from the federal government. Since 1980, hundreds of millions of dollars have been sent by the federal government to local police departments, small local police departments, to purchase military-style weaponry. This includes things like guns, tanks, helicopters, armored personnel carriers. This might surprise some people, but there's a book by Radley Balco called The Rise of the Warrior Cop. And I mean, anybody who's walked to the Dunkin' Donuts or to the Starbucks will generally see a large group of Montgomery County police officers. They're heavily armed. They travel in groups, and I'm a privileged white male, 59 years old, and frankly, they scare the hell out of me. I mean, I don't want to walk up to a bunch of heavily armed police officers and ask them how their day is going. It really scares the hell out of me. So I'm just curious, from the council members who sit on the Public Safety Committee, do you guys have any idea how much money or weaponry Montgomery County gets every year from the Defense Department or from the Department of Justice?
Off the top of my head, I do not know that figure. We can certainly get it. I mean, it would be federal money would be in our budget. But I can tell you, Montgomery County does not have a helicopter. So, but I'd have to get back with you for actual numbers.
Thank you.
I think, I can't give you the exact dollar, but I used to chair the Public Safety Committee, and we actually, I think, Mr. Katz, I believe we stopped them from getting a helicopter at one point. The only vehicle,
they might have requested it. We never got one.
Yeah, we never went there. The only vehicle I've seen is one personnel carrier that's been around for a long time, years and years and years, and it's definitely military surplus. It's not regular police equipment, but as a rule, you don't see it.
And if I can, just to tell you how fast I can get an answer, but I've just been told that we received $0 from the federal money. If that's not correct, we will correct it. But from what I've been told, we received $0.
So who funds the SWAT teams?
Montgomery County tax dollars. I mean, they're trained by Montgomery County, and yeah. And Mark, you agree with that, is that correct?
Yeah, it's
Mark
a regular,
Alvernos,
it's a regular part of the police department. They've got SWAT teams. They don't use them very often, but they have them.
Okay. Thanks. Let's see. Carlene Dunkley, not sure if you still wanted to comment.
She's on mute.
Yeah, I sent her unmute. Christina Powell.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, Carlene is back. Yes.
Okay. Go ahead,
Sorry, you
Carlene.
kind of see me, but you don't. My kid uses my iPad. So I've been a Montgomery County resident for, I'm almost 45. I've been around here for about 43 years. And I wholeheartedly support the police and feel much safer with them in our community for many reasons. I have 2 small children. And as I have gone about my daily activities, being a mom, a stay-at-home mom, I am out and about all the time. And I see sometimes suspicious activities. In particular, recently, we've had an increase in homicides and carjackings here in Montgomery County. They've gone way up from previous years. How will we, you guys, address this if your goal is to reduce police presence?
Well, I mean, I can't, because I'm just speaking on really from my experience in the task force. I totally understand what you're saying. And as a mom myself and a longtime resident of Montgomery County, I completely get that police are vital. And I agree with you that violent crime has gone up. I think what that recommendation referring to lessening police presence is really a starting point to have a conversation as to where the police should actually be focusing their energy. Whether it's mostly going to be on violent crimes, that's a discussion that the county council we hope to have for the county executive. Whether it's focusing on property crimes and violent crimes, again, that's a conversation we need to have. The purpose of making that recommendation a key recommendation is to really ignite some conversations like we're having tonight to figure out how we can get to a yes in terms of dealing with racial bias that is obviously embedded in policing, but yet still focus on the importance of keeping our community safe and keeping our kids safe. So yes, I completely hear what you're saying, and I appreciate your feedback on that. So if anyone else has anything to add to that.
I'll just say briefly, Carlene, we're about the same age, and I have a toddler too who likes taking my iPad as well. So I totally understand where you're coming from. And you're right. Violent crime is up. Incidents of domestic violence have also significantly increased. And you know, it's very alarming. There's also been a significant increase in driving while intoxicated in the county as well. And some of this is quite frankly related to the crisis that we find ourselves in within the pandemic. Some of this is just families that are in crisis. And so I think that, you know, this is not just a law enforcement issue. This is a social service issue too. And the county working with the executive has been trying to invest additional resources to help strengthen our safety net to address those families that are in crisis, people that have lost their jobs, people that are very close to being evicted. And so I think that, you know, we certainly need to work hand in hand and use all the tools that we have at our disposal to address the immediate crisis before us. But this is more of a systemic issue, I think, directly connected to the crisis that families find themselves in right now.
Okay. I see Mel Tull.
Yes. Question for the committee. It's going to be great to have a really well-staffed crisis response team with mental health experts who can go out and deal with people who are experiencing a problem. Often not a violence problem, but just a behavioral problem. But the question is, what happens then? Will this process create policies for what to do with them, and even places to take them to get the treatment they need? Will we have the facilities? I mean, it's easy to set up 3 or 4 people on a crisis response team. I think it's going to be really tough to set up the process to deal with what they have to deal with. Mark,
Yeah.
you're in for it.
Yep. Look, we've been talking about this because you're absolutely right. I mean, whoever responds has to be able to do something. There's no way somebody's going to go there, show up with somebody who is in distress, have a half-hour conversation, bring them a cup of coffee, and then think the problem is solved. That's not the way this goes down in the real world. And we're going to need to be able to create a facility. And what we're looking to do, we're actually looking at this, is finding a place to build a very basic kind of, what's the right word, restoration center. In the old days, they used to have what they call them drunk takes. You didn't throw a drunk in a jail and give them a police record. You put them in a tank, in a room to sober up, and then the next morning they were out again. We need a place to bring people, hopefully to let them sleep off the night if they need it, or to go to a place where they can get counseling, where somebody's there to talk to them, where maybe if they need a bed, there's a place for them to get a bed. We've got to take this beyond just I responded to the problem to I'm going to treat the problem. Because if I don't treat the problem, that person's likely to be out there the next day. And that's where we're going to need everybody recognizing, because I know how folks feel in Silver Spring about the issue they see down there. They don't want it. They would like it to go away, and it has not gone away in any way, shape, or form, near as I can tell. But in order to deal with it, we're going to have to find the resources to manage it differently. And so when we say that we're putting this money in the budget, what we need from people who really want us to do this is a lot of support saying, yeah, this is the right thing to put in your budget. We'll support you doing that. There you go, spending money again, you bad old government, you. We need the resources to deal with it.
The trick is going to be to take people off the street and into that facility without using the police.
Yes, it can be done. Other people do this. But it's a matter of, all the folks who do this, it's based on being able to get the trust of the person to feel that if they're going with you, they're going to a place where they're going to be safe, not that they're going to be thrown into a jail or pulled in front of a magistrate and go through all the hell you go through when you're in a jail, only to come out again and then repeat. So we're going to spend some money doing this, and it's the nature of, trying to bring about fundamental changes. You can't change this if it's all going to come down to a budget issue and we're going to balk at changing anything because we don't want to deal with the budget issues. Nothing will change. We will continue to wallow in this kind of misery. And I'll say, the worst part about this, particularly with racism in general, is we basically don't allow human beings to develop to their full potential. And that costs everybody in society. So having a system where we don't deal with these things is enormously costly, far more costly than what it would cost to try to solve the problems in the first place. That's my soapbox.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Executive. Next, we have Christina Powell.
Hi, thank you so much for taking your time to answer our questions tonight. I just have kind of a twofold question. So I do volunteer work with a nonprofit that does outreach with police and first responders and military and how to deal with PTSD and dealing with PTSD in public, which is obviously a mental health issue. But has our task force done any ride-alongs or spoke to any of the rank and file officers, not leadership, to see what they feel about recommendations to get their buy-in and input? Because I know that within Montgomery County, as well as a lot of the counties around the country, morale is really low and police officers are retiring at record rates, as well as not joining Montgomery County Police Department specifically. I think this recruit class is about 26 officers. Is there anything that we're going to do to make sure that our county stays safe while getting the proper training?
Look, I think that, I'll take a shot at this. I think that, part of it is telling people this is about training. When I've talked to officers and realized, and this is true for what people, some of my colleagues think about discipline. Things that they want to discipline people for are things they've been instructed and told to do. And you have a conflicting message when you're trained to do things such as pretextual stops. And then we all say to them, oh no, pretextual stops are flat out wrong and you can't do that anymore. And if you do it, it's a violation of policy and we're going to punish you for it. You cannot exist in both these worlds. And you can't expect them to exist in both these worlds. So we've got to be clear, I think, about our expectations. We've got to be clear about the changes we make. We actually need to be willing to pay them. They are among the lowest paid in this region. And there are other counties that are, dealing with the shortage of police officers by paying signing bonuses. And we've watched our pay relative to other jurisdictions seriously deteriorate. So there's nothing like, telling somebody what you're worth than them being able to read pretty clearly that the wealthiest county in the region pays their officers about the least in the region. And oh, by the way, I want you to go out every day and put your life on the line and make sure everybody stays safe. We're going to have morale problems until we deal with that. But we also have to be able to say that, regardless of what you bring to where you are in this moment has to change. And you have to be willing to look at new ways of doing things and embracing the changes that actually will make policing easier in the long run, make their jobs less conflictual in the long run, and be better for everybody in the long run. But that's going to take a lot of talking and a lot of work. And I'm already having conversations with people.
And Christine, just to add, I did do a ride along many years ago. Probably 2014, if not before that. To the county executive's point, the police are, only as good as how they're trained, and training is so critical. And I'm sure as a former prosecutor, I remember talking to officers, when I was at work, I asked them how to, be better on the streets. They will listen if you give them the tools. They will listen. That helps with morale. It's all about just connecting the community voices with what they're being trained to do. And I think once we have that synergy, my hope is that morale will improve. But I thank you for that comment and observation.
Yeah, and I'll just add briefly as well. The change is hard, right? Like, we're not wired as human beings to want to change. We, in anything, we don't want to change the restaurant we go to. We don't want to change, And so I think that is the attention and the focus, and police officers having to deal with all the other failures of our society, in the sense that the investments we haven't made in mental health, the investments we haven't made in education and recreation, they're on the end of that spout in a lot of cases. Not paid as well as was mentioned, conflicting training, this warrior, then you add, warrior mentality versus guardian. What am I supposed to do? And it gets complicated really quickly. That doesn't mean there's an urgency and we have to change it, but I think there's an opportunity now to recruit a new set of folks in. It doesn't mean we don't train and value and work with the officers who are on the force. But I think as attrition naturally happens, I think there's an opportunity. For example, we're going to have a new use of force policy that the people who get trained on that are not going to be trained the same way someone was trained, just a few years ago, to change the way law enforcement happens, and that culture will happen over time. But there's a lot of pieces connected to it. So, I'm glad you brought the point up.
Okay, I think we have 3 final comments here. We will start with, I think it's Jane Whitaker, followed by 2 additional members from our task force. It will be Karen and Edmund. So if you guys will stand ready to comment. So starting with you, Jane Whitaker.
Yeah. Thank you very much, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to comment tonight. I have read the report. I agree with whoever said you need to read it more than once. I think that was Councilmember Katz. I've gotten through it once at least, and some of the recommendations are very good. And I think that as the head of the chamber, we can support that. Some of the others are a little bit troubling, but a couple of comments that I wanted to make is I've spent some time getting to know the officers in District 3, a lot of the officers in District 3, and I have to say that I have the utmost respect for every single one that I've met. They care about Silver Spring. They care about the community. They care deeply about the future of our community, and they're quite concerned about it. And so I just want to say that as a resident, I believe that they really do care about their community and about keeping us safe and about making us safe. Back to one of the things that Meltel talked about, though, is that I wonder whether the group has looked at some of the issues that are maybe not within the control of Montgomery County that have to deal with mental health issues. We have had some issues with some folks who, our folks want to get them off the streets, but it's not just that. Our folks care also about the people who are on the streets who need help. And particularly now, I'm getting calls from our members about the folks who our mental health people can't engage, but they're worried that it's cold and they're worried that something's going to happen to these people, and what can we do for them? And I think we have a situation with one gentleman right now who did get in to get some care, did get in through the state, but then is back out on the street right now. And how do we address those kinds of situations that are not really within the county's purview? This was a state decision, and I don't know, Mark, whether you've looked at that or not, but I think that it needs to go beyond just what the county can do and with engaging with the folks and getting them the trust. We understand that, but once you get them into a system of getting the help, you have to keep them there somehow, and you have to encourage them to continue to get the help that they need. So I will leave it with that, and I will thank the group for what it's done, and I look forward to more conversation.
So I actually have looked at that. I've been concerned for years that Montgomery County's official policy is that if you're homeless, you sleep outside 8 months a year. That's ridiculous, and it's inhumane. So we are actually looking to buy a building, and I've asked my folks to look at what it would cost to get a couple of buildings that can be refitted into housing so that I can offer people a place to stay at night year round, rather than being on the street and not lying on a cot in one big room, clutching your belongings next to somebody else who's lying on a cot. Actually, in Silver Spring, it would be lying on the floor in one big room. I think we need to do this. We've got to deal with homelessness, get folks off the street. And I believe, and I've talked to folks who work in this field, that if we had them in places where they could sleep and they woke up in the morning and they knew they were going to get a bite to eat before they started their day, that gives you an opportunity to have a touch, a social worker to have a touch with somebody, have a conversation and see if you can make a breakthrough, if you can get an opening to try to get, more into the person in the sense of, what do you need and how can I help you? So I'm going to try to drive things in that direction. Like I said, we've got one building we're looking at now. I've asked them to see if they can find a couple more. We want them in several places around the county, not everybody in one place. And again, at the end of the day, we'll need council support for spending money on something like this, which I happen to think is really important.
If I could just add really quick, and certainly it makes a lot of sense, Mark. The county has had a housing first policy now for about 10 years, and we've made some real progress, and at one point actually effectively eliminated veteran homelessness, but we've seen a spike in homelessness over the last 2 years that unfortunately is undeniable. And I think that, to your point, Jane, and I'm very familiar with this case because I've been very involved in trying to find reasonable solutions. And, the fact is, as you pointed out, there are people who have severe, and I mean severe, mental health issues, and a system that is not set up to address people, because everyone who's in that situation, you in most cases have to demonstrate a clear danger to yourself or to society. And there are many people who have severe mental health issues that fall into this gray area, and unfortunately often don't have families that can help provide an additional layer of support, or there's been a family dynamic in which individuals are completely disconnected and effectively entirely on their own. So the kind of housing that the county executive just mentioned is absolutely appropriate in most cases, but there are some in which there are people that need very significant round-the-clock 24/7 care. and there are not enough facilities to be able to absorb people who are in that situation. And there are not laws currently in place that make it easy for us to be able to work with individuals that are in this situation to be able to give them the support that we need. So just very quickly, Jane, we're working right now, and it's going to take some time, but we're going to be working with our delegation on legislation because this is a state level issue to help address some of those challenges, but then also to the county executive's point, look at more housing options and opportunities that also provide mental health services to go along with it. It's going to take some time. It's challenging to say the least, but we are going to make some progress.
And if I can jump in for 1 second, you know, in Gaithersburg years ago, we started the Wells Robertson House, and it was for people who had alcohol and drug issues. And we put a house right next to City Hall, and we've had over 30 some years already, I guess, maybe longer than that. And the amount of lives that we have saved, the amount of lives that we have changed has been truly a sense of pride for the community. And I can tell you that in the very beginning when it was done, I was there for the very beginning of when it was done, there were people that were very annoyed that we put it there. But the reality was once they saw the change, not only for the people that we were helping and the families we were helping, but for the community in general, it has truly been a sense of pride. And I actually had people who called me originally yelling while we were putting this facility there, call me back, which is rare this happens, but called me back and said how wrong they were and how pleased and proud they were that we did it.
Okay, thank you. I see we have Nikki Afsar.
Yes, hello. My name is Nikki Afsar. I am in Bethesda. My family and I have lived in the county for upwards of 10 years now. I have two things. The first part is a question. You've started to talk about this, but if you could elaborate some more about how you'll be working with other parts of the county government, especially Health and Human Services, to create this ecosystem of programs that you've talked about that will take care of social services that the police shouldn't be responsible for. And then I also wanted to talk a bit about some statistics. The New York Times article that Council Member or County Executive Elrich cited, the numbers in that actually said that police in Montgomery County spend 4% of their time on serious violent crimes. So 4% of their time is spent on serious violent crimes, and 35% of their time is spent on all crimes, which means that 65% of this county's police department's time is spent on non-criminal issues, including medical calls, including traffic enforcement, and also something called self-promotional activities or proactive measures. So if we're talking about where to start in terms of how do we put a number on how much we give our police, that's one place to start. Another place to start is looking at the recommendation, somebody has mentioned this before, to reduce the number of sworn officers in districts 3 and 4 by 50%. And Councilmember Katz, I see that you are mentioning, you know, if we're going to do all this data collection, that is very important. We need to make sure they have the right software and the right computers. That does not mean that we need to increase the police department's budget. I think that increasing this police department's budget in this year during a pandemic, when we've had multiple shootings by the police in this year, is unacceptable. We see in this report from the task force that there is racial disparity in the police department's traffic enforcement, use of force, and number of arrests. You do not reward a police department with that kind of widespread racial disparity by increasing their budget. If you want them to get the data and the software that they need, you take it out of their existing budget. If you want them to get better pay, reduce the number of officers so the ones that you have left can get better pay. And we're concerned about how much our officers are getting paid, how much are our social workers getting paid, how much are our teachers getting paid? Are we making sure that they are living comfortable lives in the wealthiest county, one of the wealthiest counties in the United States? And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Any thoughts or feedback on that? I do see that's 8 o'clock, and I know we did say we had 2 members of the task force, but thankfully we had voices like Nikki and others that chimed in from the community. So thank you for stepping up and offering that insight.
Can I say? I'll say one quick thing.
Please.
One of the things the task force didn't do, and I joke with Chief Jones. I don't know if he's on, but I'm sure it'll get to him. We've been on a road show for about a year where we're on different things talking about the police department. And, we have a lot of concurrent jurisdiction. So, we have the sheriff's department has, 169, Park Police, Montgomery County, another 100, Tacoma Park, Rockville. So our numbers are really a lot higher than you would think for 1,300 sworn officers because there's all this concurrent jurisdiction. And we haven't even scratched the surface on what that means and how we're deploying and where people go. And that's an important factor when you talk about budget, because it's often said we have per 1,300 per our size. Well, it's not, we have a lower size. It's not really fair when you look at the whole thing. And to your point, Nikki, the reason the data is so important, and they are procuring a new system, we've already appropriated the money for it, but there's things that police departments have been resistant, and the union is part of this, and it's just historically to a real in-depth analysis of what works, how they're spending their time, what happens. And it's really hard to get that information, which you need to redirect the time, money, and resources. And I agree with your point overall. You can't just throw more money at it and say we need to do more things. You have to get a handle on how they're currently using their time. You mentioned the violent crime statistics, right? And which is where I think police, most of us agree. I think you get 90% agreement that police should be focused on violent crime, right? And then you also say you want to get the stuff downhill that can prevent some of that violent crime. There's also, we have a lot of low-level offenses that we arrest for. Drug possession without the intent to distribute. There's some data that's out on that. That's something on the other side. We need to understand that. And that's why the ELA work, I think, will be really helpful going forward to help get us deeper into that. So I take your point. I didn't want to leave it unresponded to. And I saw a lot of clapping because I think a lot of people agreed with it. So I just wanted to address it. It's an important point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Redondo. We are over time. And again, it's a topic that we can go on and on for hours, but we've devoted ourselves to 2 hours and we stretched it by over 4 minutes. So thank you all. Mark Maurer is going to lead with the closing remarks.
Yeah, well, thank you, Bernice. Just briefly, thank you to everybody for being on the call tonight. This is, I think, a very engaging, constructive conversation. On the task force, we worked very hard over 5 months to think through these issues, to come up with the report, the recommendations, and the like. But the recommendations are only as good as the environment in which they come. And as I think we've seen tonight from the county executive, the members of the council, and all the people representing diverse parts of the county, we have a very good environment in which to think through these recommendations and begin the next phase, which is implementation. I don't think we have any illusion you're going to implement all 87 of these tomorrow, but the conversation, working out the politics, the funding, the strategy, this is the important part. And we don't know what this conversation will look like moving forward, but I think we are all committed to continuing the conversation, to continuing the advocacy, to build on what's working well in the county, but to make sure that we continue to progress and we're alert to the times and we're alert to the issues of the day. So thanks again for being here, everyone. We will be in touch in the future as we move ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll be talking to you all soon.
Yes, very definitely looking forward to that.
Everybody off?
I don't think.
Context of the population. So, for example, in the tweet that the governor released on Sunday, it mentioned that there were 3 zip codes